the Jordan De Goey situation. A situation that riles people up the wrong way very quickly. A situation that has seemingly parted the St Kilda supporter base. A situation that could really decide the direction of the football club, for good or for bad. A situation that at the moment is unresolved, and a situation, lastly, that I haven't really talked about on Saints TV, and I feel like now is a better time than any, with the trade period among us, with trade talk happening on the channel, to discuss this, to talk about basically where everything is at, where it could end up, who's the winner out of this, what are the consequences, what is on the table from Collingwood, what is on the table from St Kilda, and what is going to happen in the next couple of weeks with the Jordan De Goey situation. So, at this very point, Collingwood have upped their game. They've upped their offer to 5 years, financially wise at a very similar ballpark to where we're at, which is estimated at roughly $800,000 per season. We've gone in with the 4-year offer, I believe. Collingwood are now looking at upping that to 5. But there's a little bit of a caveat with that, and that's kind of where the sticking point is. It's kind of the main reason why I think Jordan hasn't signed on with Collingwood and why St Kilda could really swoop in. And we'll talk about that in a bit more detail later in the video. But at this point, Jordan De Goey has a 5-year offer on the table from Collingwood. Obviously, the sticking point remains behavioural clauses within that contract. So at this point, the offer is essentially better, if not the same, as the St Kilda offer. The only difference is that with the St Kilda offer, it's just a normal, regular offer, good money, good years, nothing that could potentially harm De Goey's, career down the track if he did find himself in trouble again, because he has found that a fair few times in his career already. Whether I think he's a good fit for the club, it doesn't really matter, because it seems like the club believe that he may be a good fit. I think, that was kind of evident when we look back on the fact that the board received approval. So that was kind of the first step. And that was about 2 months ago. I reported that we were looking into it, and it was just kind of whether we would do the due diligence and review every angle of this, whether it was going to be a risk for us, which obviously it is, whether he's the right player, first of all, whether the money that we're willing to offer is fair, and obviously long-term effects of the supporter base and what we think about it. Obviously, anytime I post about this on the channel, no surprise that there are thousands of comments. A lot of them are negative. A lot of them are people saying they will cancel their memberships, they won't support St Kilda, it's the wrong thing, we've done it before, we've had bad boys at the club, it hasn't worked out, it's big money. How can we guarantee that we can turn it around? We don't have the culture at the moment, like a Sydney or a Geelong, to turn it around. So why are we seemingly interested in Jordan De Goey? And this dates back to 2018, when Collingwood made the grand final. He was, tipped to really go to North Melbourne or St Kilda, and both clubs were really pushing. Close to $1 million a year was on the table. He stuck fat. He played at Collingwood, and this year, particularly the last month, he's played close to his career best football. His qualifying final against Geelong was exceptional. Just his final series, I guess, in general, his last month of football. So it's a really difficult one when you look at it. I know that a lot of people watching this are going to comment and say, Jakey, why the hell are we looking at him? We won't talk about his off-field stuff just yet, but in terms of his on-field, I guess the club identify him as a bit of an extrovert. He's an impact player. He's that dusty type player that doesn't need a lot of the football, can have 20, but kick 3 and be a match winner. He can break a game open in a quarter. He kicks goals. He's a goal-kicking mid. He's flexible. He can play in the guts, but you can also rest him forward for the majority of a game. He's explosive, and he's a big game player. And that's, I think, one thing that we can say. We don't really have many of those. We've had a lot of big games in the last couple of years, and there haven't been many players that have stood up. Collingwood playing big games every week in front of big crowds. He's used to that. He's used to performing in front of 60, 70,000 people on a regular basis. We don't really deliver that sort of lifestyle. Some people believe that perhaps that's a lifestyle that would entice him, that he'd be out of the limelight, he'd be at a smaller club, the attention wouldn't be on him. I slightly disagree with that. I think that regardless with his history off field, that wherever he goes, if he does stay at Collingwood or whether he leaves, he's always going to be a player that journos are looking to find some gossip about, and the cameras are always going to be on him every step of the way. So Jordan De Goey, at the moment, it's sitting at 5 years at a rough 800,000 for Collingwood with behavioural clauses. His agent and him are obviously pushing back on that. And you'd imagine that if Collingwood did revert to just a normal contract, that he would re-sign. But I'm tipping they're not going to revert. I think they're very firm on it. They understand the issues they've had with him before. And then we've come in seemingly not a huge offer. So that's one thing that I guess we should say, is that although it is around 800,000, it's not, a 1.1, 1.2 million a year contract. It's not a silly contract. It's reasonable money, but based on the form and the profile of the player, it's probably what you'd expect most clubs to offer, if not maybe unders. And it's one of those situations that every day that goes by that he doesn't sign with Collingwood, whether I like it or not, I think we get a step closer to getting him. I don't know why. Some people believe that it's already a done deal and that all of this, sort of news leaking about Collingwood upping it to 5 years, that the contract, behavioural clauses are the main sticking point, and that's the main reason for him leaving. It's just a way to make it look like that's the reason when it eventually does happen. Jordan De Goey, in his last couple of seasons in terms of matches, he's played 19 matches in 2022, 20 in 2021, 10 in 2020, 17 in 19, 21 in 18, 14 in 2017, 20 in 2016, and 16 in 2015. So there's only really one season there where he's missed a majority of the season. That was 2020. But for every other season, he's played upwards of 14 games. You want to get probably 18 plus out of him if you did sign him on that sort of money. I think he might be that player that we lack, that X factor, that explosive player, that someone that can just change the game on a dime. But with the sort of baggage that he comes with, it's a really difficult one for the club. And I know that the club are reviewing this and taking this seriously, but at the same time, what do supporters want the most? Obviously we want the right people at the club. But if he came in and we want a flag with him, regardless of what he does off the field, are we thinking about that while we celebrate the flag? I'm just, there's just kind of like everyone wants the best of both worlds. Everyone wants a really clean club, a really well-run club and premierships. And then, you see other clubs where, Dusty Martin's had his troubles, Richmond's best player, Brownlow medalist, Norm Smith medalist, absolute superstar. He's had his issues. They've kind of worked through those. Obviously, not to the extent of De Goey, but it's just, when I think about it, it almost hurts my brain kind of what we should do. It's whether we really think that we can trust him. And I guess some people will say, well, why should we? Because he can't even sign a contract for Collingwood, a team that's just made a prelim, where he's a starter every week in front of big crowds, closer to a flag than us seemingly at the moment, all because of a behavioural clause. And that's something that he doesn't trust himself to meet. But if he did come and we could somehow sort him out and get the best out of him for 4 or 5 years, whatever that may be, with Jack Steele, with Brad Crouch, with Max King in his prime, it could be something that could take us up a few notches. Whether that's enough to win a flag, I really don't know. I don't think one player will get us to a flag, but he will create a big point of difference in our lineup. And there is no one else on the market quite like him. He's probably the best midfielder that we could get this off-season. It's just a shame that he also happens to be the most controversial midfielder or player in the competition. So it's in a very, very interesting spot. A lot of people believe that he will not stay at Collingwood. And to be honest, the more I think about it, the more I believe that. I genuinely think that every day that goes by, their best and fairest, I believe, is next Friday. If he has not signed up until that point, say the Friday, I think there's a big chance that he's gone. I think there's a big chance that we're in this up to our eyeballs, and Jordan De Goey could very well be a St Kilda player in a couple of weeks' time. I'll leave it there. I think this is a very, very interesting situation. I know that a lot of people watching are either going to be, I hope we take the risk. I hope that he comes and he plays his best football because he's a gun on the field, regardless of what he does off the field. And then a lot of other people are going to be thinking, cool, he's a good player, but he's a knob off the field, so why the hell do we want him? Why, if he's so good, why are we the only club that's interested in him? So if that does eventuate, I think we would have to go to a trade. And we've potentially got pick 7 to play with if we work with Gold Coast, because they've got Bose and his contract is heavily back-ended, believed up to $800,000 for the young, former top 10 draft pick from a couple of seasons ago. And they're willing to offer pick 7 with him. If we can land that in a Ben Long trade, we then have pick 7 and pick 9 to play with. We trade one of those for him, and then we keep the other one for hopefully Cam McKenzie, who could fall in around that range of 7 to 10 in the draft. A very, very good young midfielder, and I think he would complement our other young players really well. So it's in a very, very precarious position. I think that's the key word. This is a very, very big decision for St Kilda. And you really hope that if it does go the way I think it's going to go, we're prepared to first get the best out of him on the field, but also secondly, understand the situation off the field and be able to manage that, be able to get the best out of him in all facets of his career, and hopefully see some success with him. But if it doesn't come through, then he signs on with Collingwood and we move on to some other big fish. But at the moment, Jordan De Goey, 5 years on the table from Collingwood. Behavioural clause is really the sticking point. I keep saying that word, I don't know why. It's really the main issue. If that's not there, that he probably stays at Collingwood. I would if I was him. But with St Kilda hovering every day that goes by, I think we get more and more confident, our board at least, get more and more confident that his signature is not far off on that piece of paper as a St Kilda player. So I'll wrap it up there saying I just wanted to give a bit of a lowdown on the situation. It's a really sensitive topic. I understand that. I think if we got the best out of him on field, we would definitely be a better team. I think we'd be silly not to acknowledge that he would make us a better team. But also, I would also be silly to not acknowledge the many issues that he's had over his years as a Collingwood player off field, and he brings that baggage with him if we get him. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on the situation, Sainers. Comment your thoughts. Do you want Jordan De Goey? If you do, why? If you don't, why? What are your feelings on the whole situation? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks very much, Sainers. If you enjoyed this video, if you enjoy the last couple of trade talk videos, I think it's a bit of fun. Anytime there's a bit of news, I'd love to do a video and just have a chat about it. Hopefully you enjoy it. So please like the video, comment your thoughts as I mentioned, and most importantly, subscribe. I'll be keeping a very close eye on this from all angles, whether it's through the media or my internal sources, and I'll report all my findings on the YouTube channel when I hear them. So enjoy the rest of your weekend, Sainers. The granny tomorrow, so we'll see who wins out of Geelong and Sydney. But nonetheless, enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I'll see you next week for some more Saints TV content. Take care, Sainers, and go you mighty Sainers. See you guys.